everyone. For those who don't know me, my name's Rebecca. I'm the founder of I Have a Voice. Thank you so much for coming along to our policy launch today. I can see some familiar faces, so thank you for your support, and also some new faces, which is really exciting. I just have two housekeeping points today. The first is if you could all go on mute to start with, that'd be fantastic. And the second is that we will be recording today's event. There's some people who wanted to come along who haven't been able to make it, so we're recording the event to share with them. So if you would prefer to have your camera off for that reason, then please turn it off. So as I said, we have a jam-packed agenda, so let's get going. A bit of background about I Have a Voice. So I set up I Have a Voice about 18 months ago now, or got going in earnest about 18 months ago. It's a social enterprise that equips young people with the tools and confidence to engage with politics. And I set up I Have a Voice after almost a decade in policy and public affairs, which essentially means my job has been to inform and to try to influence policymakers and decision makers on a whole range of issues, from climate change to social care, most recently promoting our creative industries. To inform decision makers and have any chance of influencing them, you need to be able to do a few things. So you need to be able to build a really robust evidence base. You need to be able to create a compelling narrative, and you need to understand what actually happens in Parliament and in the civil service. And you also need a good grasp of how any decisions could impact the wider society. For those who just joined, if you could mute yourselves, that would be fantastic. Thank you. And drilling that down to the individual level, this means understanding how a decision made by policymakers will impact you and impact your loved ones and impact your communities. And I know that sometimes politics can feel like this complex, abstract thing, but at its heart, it's about people individually, and people collectively. So and I'm sure many of you here think that if everyone in the country, and perhaps even everyone in the world, had this knowledge of how politics works and what actually happens when people make policy decisions and how you can engage with it, then it would have many benefits, and we're going to discuss those today. But for example, we could have more nuanced political discourse that doesn't pit one side against another in a divisive and binary standoff, as we've seen too many times recently. And I think that it would help to improve trust in politics and politicians, which, according to the Hansard Society's annual audit, is at an all-time low. And so that's what we do at I Have a Voice. We take public affairs to the classroom and we work with young people to show them how they can engage with what's happening in Parliament to get their voices heard. And we know that young people are really engaged. There's now so many sites for people to sign petitions. And in recent months alone, people have protested that Black Lives Matter and that climate change is a crisis that we need to tackle now. And young people have been at the forefront of those protests. Both petitions and protests are useful forms of engaging in politics, but they work best when they're used alongside things such as writing to your MP and asking them to take action on an issue, perhaps raising your perspective during a debate or putting a question to the relevant minister. Or if you know that select committees have inquiries that you can respond to, or even that there's a plethora of all-party parliamentary groups. There's hundreds on kind of almost any issue imaginable, including one on political literacy. And there are ways that you can engage with those groups of MPs and with peers to find solutions and build consensus, because that's where most policy formation happens, when you're building consensus, which I think most people don't realise about politics. And these are the types of things that we show young people how to do so that they have them in their political participation toolkit for the rest of their lives. We have a star-studded lineup today, and the presentations are going to be intentionally fast-paced. And after we've had a series of talks, we're going to go into breakout rooms and have some discussion, as we really want to hear from you today. This is a discussion paper, and we want to keep talking with everyone here today to take these discussion points forward. So please don't view this event as a one-off, but as the start of an ongoing conversation. So to kick us off, we have Hannah Stevens. So Hannah is the director of Electher, a tiny but very mighty organisation working to motivate, support and equip women into all spheres of elected office across Britain. Hannah has 15 years experience working as a senior manager within the third sector, with particular experience in supporting the setup and growth of charitable organisations, and has been working with women in politics for the past 4 years. Hannah has sat on the board of several international organisations and is a strong advocate for diversity in public life. So Hannah, over to you.
Hello everyone. Hi Rebecca, thank you for that, and thanks so much for all your work in this space. I'm really excited that we're here at the launch of your report. This is such an important topic, and I think bringing partners and interested individuals together to engage in this conversation is absolutely vital. So thank you for inviting us. That was a great intro to Electher. We are indeed tiny and mighty, and we are just doing all we can really to support and encourage women on their journey into elected office. We've been running for about 4 years. And through that 4 years, how we run has shifted greatly, and as has our understanding of how vital political literacy is within the narrative of encouraging a more gender balanced political representation. So, quick summary of how poor the situation is, in case you don't already know, that there were only 220 female MPs voted in at the 2019 general election, which is still only 34%, and women make up 51% of Britain. That was 12 more than the last general election, 2017. And so at this rate, it's going to be 2057 before we reach gender parity in Parliament, which just isn't good enough. It's 2021. Only 6 out of those 650 MPs have disclosed they've got a disability, which represents 0.01%, when in reality, approximately 20% of the British population live with a disability. And for local council, 35% of our councillors in the country are women. And we only know that because the Forces Society and Democracy Club work together to physically count the number of women that get elected after every local election, because there is no system in place to collect that data because it's not deemed important. So we can't really seek shift until we really understand the true picture. Scottish Parliament, we saw great progress in the May election this year. So we've got 45% of MSPs now in Holyrood, and in the Welsh Senedd we've got 43%, which is a step in the right direction. And the first women of colour were elected both to Scottish Parliament and the Welsh Senedd this year. So again, another very vital step towards gender balance and intersectional representation in our elected offices. Basically, why is this important, right? When women take part in politics, the whole of society benefits. There was a report published last year from the Westminster Foundation for Democracy and King's College London that was based on the analysis of 500 pieces of evidence across the whole world, and it proved it. We always knew it before, but that research absolutely proved it, that it benefits everybody, and we work towards a more more equal society when you've got women in elected office. So what's our role in this? We are working to provide women with the knowledge, the confidence and skills that they might need to move forward on their political journey. We run online workshops, peer support circles, and we're continuing to evaluate and look at what we are delivering and the community that we're creating and what women actually need. In the very first place, we were set up to just run workshops to demystify the process and structure of standing for elected office. And we did that happily and well for a couple of years. And at the start of last year, as the world shifted online, it was a positive step for us that we were able to have deeper, richer conversations with more women across the country. And we really started to develop our understanding of what the needs are. And it's become increasingly clear that really it's a lack of political literacy that is getting in the way for so many people in even considering stepping into elected office. And in our workshops and in the spaces that we create, we're working really hard to create a safe space and really to answer people's questions. And so many women, what does my councillor do? And they are embarrassed that they don't know the answer to that question. And they think that they're the only person in the world that doesn't understand this, where actually it's totally clear that for all of us, it's so complicated, our democracy, and we haven't been taught about it in a literal way, that it takes years for people to understand how different spaces and where power is held and how we can engage in that power and have our voices lifted. So really, it's become clearer to us over the past couple of years how important the political literacy piece is. I think 2 years ago, we would have said that we were an organisation working in the women's sector, and we hadn't really considered the wider democracy sector as it's evolving and our role within it. But it's become increasingly relevant to us and vital to us that we are engaging in these conversations and really understanding that. I think if we had a much stronger political literacy education, then we'd see much greater amount of people of all lived experiences stepping forward and exploring their role in standing for elected office. So, and over the past 2 years, we've been really creating specific space for minoritised communities of women, really bringing together deaf women to talk about their political ambitions. But when that information about how the Scottish Parliament works for you has not been available in BSL, or is created but then isn't shared with the deaf community, for us to walk in and say, come on, let's talk about your political career, we need to go back 5 steps and really, really talk about the foundations of our democracy. And so as we've gone deeper into creating those spaces for underrepresented communities, it's become even clearer the importance and the need for strong, well-designed, accessible resources and information. And it surprises me, and really it shouldn't, but it's so disappointing that it takes community organisations like ours, tiny organisations working hard and doing their best to ignite these conversations, when really it should be the responsibility, in my opinion, our education sector should be providing every single young person in this country with the tools and the understanding so that they can actively participate. So there's lots of academic research identifying the barriers to women contesting elections, but this conversation isn't really about that, but the societal-wide misogyny, caring responsibilities, the financial barriers, online gender-based violence, the toxic environment that we're seeing surrounding our political spheres. But what we haven't really seen is a deeper conversation, that the lack of knowledge and understanding of that women have around political literacy is actually what's stopping them from participating in the very, very first place. So over the coming year, we're really working hard to develop our resources and to make those resources available and accessible to women in our community, to really support them in understanding that they're not the only ones that don't understand how a council works, and that actually by giving yourself the information and the knowledge about how to involve yourself in your local government, in your national government, in your devolved government is a very, very powerful thing. So we're really thrilled to be collaborating with some of the organisations that are here today, loving the work of I Have a Voice, and this political literacy and participation report is really, really important and very, very welcome, and the conversation stemming from this and the APPG that is on political literacy that's administrated by ShoutOut UK. So for our democracy to work, we must have all communities across the country, young and old, with the knowledge and understanding of how our political systems work. And without that, it's going to be a long struggle to achieve the gender representative democracy that we all so rightly deserve. So thank you, Rebecca, and your team. It was a joy to contribute to the report, and I really, really wish you all well in this ongoing conversation.
Thank you. And that perfectly teed us up actually to bring in our next speaker, who is Matteo from ShoutOut UK. So Matteo is the founder and CEO of ShoutOut UK, a multi-award winning education platform and creative social enterprise that provides world-class programmes on media and political literacy. And they are currently the Secretariat for the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Political Literacy, as Hannah and I have both mentioned. And in April 2015, Matteo spearheaded Britain's first ever youth leaders debate in collaboration with Channel 4. He was selected in 2018 by the US Embassy in London to take part in the International Visitor Exchange Programme run by the US State Department, and he has taken part in the verified UN anti-disinformation campaign, very relevant to today. And he's also given evidence for House of Lords Select Committees, and is a regular contributor to Talk Radio and Sky News. So we're thrilled to have you here today. Matteo, over to you. I can see Matteo. No, I Grazie, Matteo. I will go to the next speaker and we will come back to Matteo, see where he is. So following up Matteo, we had Tomi. So Tomi works for Film London as their Equal Access Network Programme Coordinator. It's supported by the Mayor of London, and the Equal Access Network ensures the capital screen industries represent the diversity of the city, emphasising equality, inclusion and diversity. And Tomi previously worked for Media Trust and contributed to the report, and also gave us an excellent vlog that's available on our website. I'll share those links later, whilst working in her previous role at Media Trust. So Tomi, over to you.
Hi, afternoon. Hopefully my Wi-Fi isn't too bad. I thought I had a little bit of time to quickly fix it, but I guess I'll go off and start speaking. Okay, cool, perfect, thank you. Yeah, so just a little bit of background. So when I worked at Media Trust, I worked on a youth programme that was supported by the Jack Petchey Foundation, and it was basically called the Vlogstar Challenge. It's all about providing young people a platform to choose a topic that's, close to them or really important to them, and create a video, basically a vlog about it. And during, obviously, my time working there, I was able to connect with Rebecca through the Jack Petchey Foundation. And this is basically how we got together, how I could kind of write and add to the report of how important it is giving young people a voice. So we all know the platform YouTube, it's a huge, like, wide world platform. And Media Trust has really good connections with YouTube. So that was where the program kind of interlocked, giving those young people that platform to use. And I always emphasize that young people's voices are super, super important. They're the next generation coming in and they're the ones that really know what's happening. I mean, we've obviously been in this pandemic for almost 2 years now, I think, well, coming full circle-ish. And they're the ones that are going through it the most. I didn't have online learning. I didn't have online graduations. I didn't, work from home for this long period before all of this. And yet they're the ones that are being affected, but it's older people and people who are, quite further in life that are making decisions for them and actually not speaking to young people and saying, how is this affecting you? What can be changed? What would your preference be on how we teach and deliver certain things? So with the programme, we had a lot of young people talk about mental health, lockdown issues, how to deal with isolation during late 2019 to 2020. And it was really interesting hearing it because it was nothing similar to what I had been having conversations with my friends or other peers in the workplace. So yeah, coming together with I Have a Voice and just basically amplifying that young people's opinions and thoughts are really important was something that I was happy to champion and do. And again, with other topics as well, so not just mental health, but education, policy, the government, young people are talking about this, but I think they feel like they don't have a place to say this without, backlash from their peers or from their schoolmates or from family members. But the Vlogstar Challenge program kind of gave them that platform to do it in a creative way, but also educating those out there and just raising stronger awareness on the topic that they were speaking about. So we had quite a lot about Brexit a couple of years ago. We've had a lot about kind of sustainability and healthy living and fast fashion, which is things that are really coming up. And then obviously a lot that went on last year with the Black Lives Matter movement. That was a big impacted story that we got from young people. So yeah, I just think it's super important to give them a platform to allow them to speak. We always get re-educated by the younger generation today. I try not to consider myself as a young person, but I'm still kind of on the T-way line, but I'm slowly crossing out of it. But they always inspire me and share such amazing buckets of knowledge that I wasn't really aware of. So I think just speaking to a young person, actually getting their opinion on something makes all of the difference. Before I left Media Trust, I did I've forgotten what it's called, a group discussion, basically invited a lot of our previous participants on and actually got them to feed into what they'd like change for the next year of the programme. And that was really, really handy because a lot of things that they mentioned, me and my previous manager didn't speak about before and didn't take into consideration how the change from face-to-face to online into then trying to phasing back into face-to-face really did alter the programme and change, the the selling points and all the fun aspects out of it. So that was quite handy. Also, I've just completely lost my train of thought. Nope, that won't come back. I was going to say, yeah, I think that's it. There was something else that I was literally just about to. Oh, that's it. Employment. So now obviously I work with Film London, and I'm working helping young creators get into the film and TV industries. It's really important that we're not just looking at history and experience and, you know, degrees and etc. But sometimes you just need a conversation with a young person. Sometimes you can tell their drive and their ambition just through having a one-to-one conversation. And I myself, when I got my role at Media Trust, I had obviously some previous work experience, but the way that I worked my way into that company was actually pulling my old manager aside and saying, can I have a chat with you? Can I just talk through some things? You know, getting to know the team members like informally, not realizing that I was going to apply, but I just kind of put myself out there. And sometimes I think we don't emphasize that enough, that some young people can actually just come up and talk to us and have conversations and not feel like they have to present themselves a type of way. So whenever I'm meeting with people, I always tell them, you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you want, or you can drop me an email. I'm always happy to give out some time, because if that makes any difference to, you know, their day or any of their applications, or just kind of getting them a foot in the door, then that's as much as I'd love to do and help out as possible. I think I have covered everything enough, but yeah, just to echo, I forgot, sorry, who went before me. I'm really sorry. I'm really bad with names. Yeah, I really loved contributing to the report and just having a look at it and reading other people's tidbits as well. It's been amazing to see, and also really grateful that we were able to get one of our young people to, you know, create a blog about how to have your voice amplified, which is in the report as well. So that makes me feel good that we've thrown in a young person regardless. But yeah, I just want to say big thank you, and I hope the rest of this event goes well.
Thank you, Tommy. And really great to hear about the ways that you provide a platform for young people to have a voice on a whole range of issues. Next up, we have Rosie from IPPR North and IPPR Scotland. She's their media. She leads and delivers their media and advocacy work, working on the two think tanks' wide range of areas. Devolution, democratic participation, transport, child poverty, health inequalities, and more. There's an echo, so everyone can make sure they're on mute. That would be fantastic. Thank you. Recently, Rosie played a key role as part of in researching, writing, and communicating IPPR State of the North report, and has appeared as a spokesperson in the media, including on Times Radio and Inside Box. Prior to the IPPR 2017, Rosie worked as a senior parliamentary assistant in UK Parliament for prominent Northern, and her work included leading successful campaigns, providing political and policy advice, managing communications, undertaking research and speech writing, and importantly, she's also the former mayor of Selby, which is in North Yorkshire. So Rosie, over to you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to you and the youth ambassadors and the team for pulling together such a fantastic discussion paper. It's a pleasure to be able to contribute. So my colleague Erica Roscoe and I wrote our contribution, and I'm going to talk through a bit about that today. I'll try and do it very quickly. Just to introduce IPPR North. We are a think tank, and we're based in the north of England. IPPR stands for Institute for Public Policy Research, and what we do is we do research, we convene people, and we also influence regional, local and national policy making. We've been around for 18 years, and during that time, all of our research has pointed towards the fact that a strong, well-resourced local and regional set of governance is vital for a healthy democracy. So today I'm going to very quickly try to explore what levelling up is, why our research shows that engaging with policy at the local and regional level is important, and then why political literacy and empowered young people are crucial as part of this. So first of all, if you've got an idea of what levelling up is, then I think the Prime Minister might like to know about it. First of all, levelling up is very opaque. So just to try and demystify it a little bit and what the phrase means, it's a phrase that was first mentioned in the Prime Minister's very first speech as Prime Minister 2 years ago. And it covered lots of different areas, from opportunity in education through to regional rebalancing. It's been used again, it's been peppered through various speeches and government communications. And most recently, the Prime Minister gave a levelling up speech, which was fairly policy light, so didn't really shed an awful lot of light for us on that. So it's been used in a variety of contexts. But what we are anticipating is a levelling up white paper later this year, which is a policy document that should set out what it means. But taking into account everything that's been said about it, I think we can assume that it's about regional rebalancing. It's a policy agenda that is about regional rebalancing along the lines of other agendas you might have heard of in the past, like the Northern Powerhouse. At IPPR North, we've looked into this, and we reckon that levelling up should mean a policy agenda that delivers the opportunity to live a good life wherever you live in the country. So why is this important? Well, all of the evidence, 18 years worth of evidence and much more, shows that the UK is the most regionally divided and also the most centralised country of its size and level of development in the world. And the centralisation is the root cause of the regional divides. So what does this kind of mean for people living in England's regions? Well, last December, we did some research, a health check on the economy of regions and the economy of the North, which is our State of the North report. And we found that the UK entered the global pandemic with deep regional divides and divides within regions too. And this has been caused by centralisation, by 10 years of austerity, and also these divides have been made worse by the pandemic. So the pandemic has made the need to rebalance or to power up more urgent than ever before. In reality, these divides mean things like the fact that the North is experiencing levels of unemployment not seen since 1994. So in October, 657,900 people claimed unemployment-related benefits in the North. And this is a particular problem in concentrated areas. So for example, if you're from Blackpool or Middlesbrough or Hull, where the Tier 3 restrictions were worst, then you're more likely to be in an area with very high levels of unemployment compared to the national average. There are also fewer job opportunities in the North compared to the rest of England. So the number of jobs per working age person in the North is 0.7 jobs. The English average is 0.74, so there's slightly fewer opportunities in the North at the moment. We also know that work isn't working for too many people in our region. So median wages are lower than the England average, and 1.5 million Northern workers are paid less than the real living wage. We also know that gender and ethnicity gaps in the North are wider than elsewhere in the UK. So in fact, 40% of women in the North are paid less than the real living wage, which is a really, really staggering figure. And then on child poverty, which is something that will really matter to a lot of young people and should matter to everybody, it's higher across the North than the rest of England. So even before the pandemic, 1 in 3 Northern children lived in poverty. That's about 5% higher than the England average, and this gap has opened up over the last decade. So it's not an old problem; it's a new problem that's been getting worse. Healthy life expectancy is below the England average in the North, in the majority of northern areas. It's even fallen in some places in recent years. And too few people in the North have qualifications that are as high as the England average. So it's worth remembering that all of these inequalities that I've described, health inequalities, gender inequalities, regional inequalities, they don't exist in isolation. And Hannah talked about intersectionality. This is important when we think about regional inequalities as well. So, for example, if you're a woman in the north, as I've mentioned, 40% of women earn less than the real living wage in our region, then you're going to be disproportionately impacted. If you're a person who is disabled, then you're going to be disproportionately impacted, and so on. So all of these inequalities do interact with each other. And it's all really, really bad, obviously. So it's bad for the north, it's bad for other regions, it's bad for everybody everywhere. But most of all, it's bad for young people. So in just 9 years' time, millennials and Gen Zs will make up the majority of the voting age population in the north. And they're going to inherit all of these challenges. So the regional divides that I've talked about, the climate crisis, the ongoing impact of Brexit, recovering from COVID-19. These are all issues that we're going to basically be handing over to young people now. And that's huge, and it needs to change. So we need to see regions and people within them empowered, and that means empowering leaders, it means improving democratic participation, and it means empowering people to have the tools to be able to kind of influence the kind of change that we need to see. And this is where political literacy and empowered young people come into it. So at the moment, we're observing a form of democratic apathy in the form of a consistently lower turnout in the north of England than the rest of the UK and England in particular. So between 2001 and 2019, every northern region recorded general election turnouts that were lower than the England average. And across the country, turnout is always consistently lower amongst young people. I think women under 25 are the least likely to vote as well. So regional disparities and other disparities such as age and gender disparities in electoral participation could create a vicious cycle, because politicians might be less inclined to act in the interests of people who are not turning out and engaging and voting. And then when those groups don't see policymakers acting in their best interests, then disengagement could be worsened. So to avoid this and to harness the care and the passion that we know exists amongst young people in other communities across the UK, then we need to open up our democracy, and we need to do various things, including representation, which again, Hannah from Electher talked in quite a bit of detail about. But we can also harness some of the new structures that are emerging. So, for example, we've got metro mayors who are fairly new across England, with the exception of the London mayor. But if we look at England's metro mayors, then now many of them are now into their second term of office. We've only just got the first woman metro mayor as well in West Yorkshire. And this is an opportunity to do democracy differently. Mayors and mayoral combined authorities are still developing, and there's still an opportunity to influence how that happens. So at IPPR North, we're doing some research into this, and we want to hear young people's voices, but we also want to see young people empowered to go and influence that themselves. So to conclude, the introduction of political education across the country, in addition to doing things like lowering the voting age, because I haven't mentioned that 16 and 17-year-olds in England can't vote in devolved elections, and that's very important when it comes to participation as well. As well as introducing mechanisms at the national, regional and local level for people to engage better and shape policy. These are all ideas whose time has come, really. So I think I've probably used my 10 minutes now, and I'll stop there, but that's a very quick overview of our chapter.
Thank you. Some really stark statistics there, and a really important reflection on kind of intersectionality. I know that's something that a lot of our youth ambassadors who are listening today are really concerned about. So thank you so much for that. Next up, we have Faye Alessandrello. Faye is a policy manager with the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, where she works on influencing UK policy development across a range of areas, including sustainability and green finance, health and care, and inclusive insurance. She works alongside actuaries to facilitate policy analysis in these areas under a Royal Charter that places a strong emphasis on the public interest. She's previously worked in policy roles in local government and both the UK and Australian civil service. Faye holds a master's degree in public policy and management from the University of Melbourne, and she is a board member of I Have a Voice. So very grateful to Faye for coming along today. Over to you, Faye.
Thanks, Max. I just want to echo the sentiments of the other speakers that it's so great to be involved with such a great piece of work and to be appearing alongside such interesting speakers. So thank you for that opportunity. As Beck said, I'm a policy manager at the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries. And actuaries are experts in measuring long-term risk. So they often pop up in the financial sector, so in insurance and in pensions. And so for that reason, I've written about the link between financial literacy and political literacy. So many of the decisions about finances are influenced by policy decisions and regulations. So as we know, policy decisions can impact all areas of your life. And as Bex and some of the other speakers have mentioned, that having the skills to successfully engage with the policy making process enables young people to get involved with issues and decisions that impact their life. And so personal finances are a really good example of this. So things that will impact their personal finances will, of course, be dictated by policy decisions. So the government, often makes decisions about spending money, tax rates and rules, and all financial products, and these decisions can impact everyone's personal finances. So ability to understand these discussions and decision making on these topics can impact a person's ability to ensure their financial security for the future. So like political literacy, financial literacy refers to the knowledge and skills that enables individuals to manage their money well. So both on a day-to-day basis and also through significant life events, so such as buying a house or buying life insurance, that kind of thing. This ability to understand the pros and cons of a money decision and weigh up the options enables them to confidently decide what to do. Someone who's financially literate is also likely to understand how common personal finance products work, such as bank accounts, credit cards, investments and saving vehicles, and some of those kind of later in life decisions, so pensions, mortgages, and as I mentioned, in insurance. Being financial literacy doesn't necessarily mean that you know everything about the money. Rather, it helps you to seek out the information that you do need so that you can make a good financial decision. Someone who's financially literate is better able to make informed financial decisions to avoid negative financial behaviours, which might involve them getting involved in problem debt. One of the pieces of work that we've been doing at the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries that my colleagues have been involved with is looking at the transfer of risk from institutions to individuals across a number of areas of public and financial policy. So this means that increasingly individuals are given more responsibility regarding financial decisions. And this is accompanied with more choice in financial products. So there's more financial products available to them. They have increased decision-making power. So this has increased the importance of both financial and political literacy decision-making in everyday life. For example, one of the examples I talk about in the article that I contributed was making decisions for saving for retirement through a pension scheme. Reflective of the fact that financial literacy and political literacy is more important than ever, we're seeing that it's an increasing priority within schools. So it's been on the national curriculum in England since 2002. In addition to some of the politics and parliamentary and voting things, we're also seeing the curriculum include things like the functions and uses of money, budgeting and managing risks, and different financial services. And while this is on the curriculum, there's certainly that more can be done. So having confidence and competence with numbers is essential to this financial literacy piece and the ability to manage money and household finances. And charitable organisation National Numeracy is running a campaign that's helping people secure their long-term financial security by helping to increase numeracy in the UK. So lots of work to be able to increase political and financial literacy, not least the work that I Have a Voice is doing within schools and with its youth ambassadors. And so this combination of political and financial literacy, kind of the combination of the two, provides young people with the knowledge, skills and understandings with the ability to play a full part in society as active and responsible citizens. It enables them to meaningfully and impactfully engage and get involved with the development of fiscal and monetary policy, which can protect their personal finances both now and in the future. And I mentioned in the report that I spoke about pensions and how removing barriers to investing to social causes that they care about may encourage young people to greater save for their retirement through a pension scheme. Just quickly, I'd like to touch on another example. A few people have mentioned their economic recovery in the wake of COVID-19. So problem debt is one of those things that if you are more financially literate, you can avoid. But more often than not, problem debt arises from unlucky events rather than financial recklessness. So the pandemic is a really good example of this. The FCA warned in October last year that 12 million UK consumers were classified as financially vulnerable. This is particularly relevant for younger people in our generation, not only because the unemployment caused by the economic slowdown has hit that generation the youngest. So in June to August last year, the youth unemployment rate was 13.1%, which was up 10.8% from the previous year. And this is in contrast for the unemployment rate increase for the general population, which only increased 4.5%, while still worrying, certainly not as large as the youth unemployment rate increase. On top of all this, figures from the ONS showed that in April 2020, the UK government borrowed £62 billion, which was the highest amount that had ever been borrowed in 1 month since comparable records in 1993. And to put this into contrast, this was about 6 times as much as what it had borrowed the previous April prior to the pandemic. So while there's a lot of uncertainty about what the COVID recovery will look like and how quickly the worst impacts of the pandemic will be mitigated, it's very likely that the financial debt from combating COVID-19 will be passed on to younger and future generations. Given that it's impossible to separate personal finances, economic recovery for COVID and policy decisions, so we can examine these issues individually. Unlikely that we can do that. We kind of need to take them as a whole. So the efforts that I Have a Voice are doing and that we're seeing other organisations do on the financial literacy side, improving both the financial and political literacy, will certainly improve the skills and abilities of young people to engage with and get involved with those policy decisions around the economic recovery of COVID, which will impact their personal finances as well as their lifestyles into the future.
Thank you so much, Faye. I hope it's apparent to everyone that the point we're trying to get across through these presentations is that political literacy is so much more than democratic participation. It impacts every single aspect of people's daily lives. And next up we have Louise, who's going to speak to us about political risk in terms of kind of the business sector and the corporate sector, but also in terms of all of the wonderful employment opportunities that there are in the political sphere that, unless you're politically literate, you just don't know about. So Louise is the Chief Operating Officer at GK Strategy, which is a corporate partner of I Have a Voice. She's spent the last 10 years advising on communications and investment deals, and she specialises in supporting businesses and organisations to evaluate political, policy and regulatory risk and provide counsel on how to mitigate the risk with good communication. So over to you, Louise.
Thanks so much, and thanks Rebecca and for inviting us to GK to speak today. And I firmly welcome all of the important this important report and its findings, and I absolutely echo the remarks and themes of the fellow speakers today and share some of their frustrations and most importantly ambitions to make our sector and politics more diverse for the future. There's a couple of key areas I was going to speak to today. Firstly, what does diversity mean for public affairs? And secondly, why does understanding political risk matter? And firstly, and I'm not going to sugarcoat this one because the public affairs sector has not done enough to be more diverse, to attract talent and make itself known. And for an industry that's really about communications, we haven't done a good job at all about communicating about ourselves. So, and that needs to change, and it really needs to change now. Driving diversity into the public affairs world is really about people knowing we're here. That there's careers in politics, outside of being an elected officials. I mean, those jobs are so important, and as the fellow speakers have said, absolutely key that we see more diversity in our elected offices. But there are a whole world of jobs outside of being politically appointed. So when I was at school, I didn't even know those jobs existed. I didn't know that jobs in communications or public affairs existed. I felt really passionate about issues, but I didn't really know how to make those sorts of changes in the world that I wanted to see. And, I was the first person in my family to go to university, and that was a huge privilege, but it was also a huge unknown. And that's why we're so proud to be partnering with I Have a Voice. I wish that they had been in my school when I was there because, I needed that information for me. We're really proud to be partnering because actually what's so key is that from the grassroots upwards, we're building a more diverse workforce for public affairs and politics for the future, and that's so brilliant. There's some, they're brilliant, smart young people out there who need to know about our sector, and because we're here and they don't know that we're here, and we as a sector continue to miss out on their talent, and if we don't shout louder and make the changes to be more accessible and open and front of mind, and our clients, our colleagues, our sector, and government is missing out because we aren't making ourselves heard. So at GK we know that diversity is a real strength, and that's diversity of all forms of experience, of thought, of background. And because of this, over the past year, we've been supporting Rebecca and the brilliant I Have a Voice team and their amazing ambassadors with work experience, paid internships and work experience. We've been helping with campaigns and with branding work, and our advisory team at GK of former ministers have been helping with those campaigns and ideas for how to make the system better. And colleagues have been in schools supporting Rebecca with that kind of grassroots school engagement. And what's that been like? It's an absolute pleasure, and I think it's a frustration sometimes. People want to do more, and actually what is great about working with I Have a Voice is it's so practical, and the team feel every day that they're doing something practical to make our sector better and more diverse for the future. Running GK day to day, I Have a Voice is of investment in our future as a business. Actually, we know that the staff of the future are those young people that are interning with us now and doing work experience placements with us now, and I have absolute confidence in that. I mean, this is really a shortcut for us for the future of a really brilliant staff, and we're so confident in that and committed to that we've committed at our board level to commitments to have our future workforce comprise of I Have a Voice, kind of our cohort through that programme, which is fantastic. And I have to say every single person that's come through that programme has been beyond exceptional, and far better and brighter than I ever was when I was at school. So I mean, absolutely incredible. We know that diversity brings constructive challenge and opportunity. It brings us the sort of rigour and experience that we need to understand the world better, and it enables us to do the best job we can do for clients. And we encourage the best from all those that work with us, and we've been really proud to support some young people from all backgrounds as paid interns and work experience placements. And that's really about ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to thrive, whether that's been balancing longer term work with work experience, supporting those young people who may not have access to tech, who may not have a place to work, who have other family commitments. And to be frank, our sector just needs to do some pretty simple things to make this better, and we need to crack on with it. So to the second question, why does understanding political risk matter? to every single person, on this call here, every single job, every business, organisation, school and hospital, everything is impacted by political risk. Everything about how an organisation functions is underpinned by policy, politics and regulation, whether that be tax, environmental standards, consumer legislation, employee protections. Everything about how business runs is underpinned by politics. I think some of us have always known that, but actually I think COVID and Brexit have really shone a light on political risk and what it means, and it's absolutely central to how organisations function and their role in the economy and society overall. And lots of businesses don't understand how their own political landscape works, or how it might change, or indeed how they might be able to be involved in shaping that change for the future. And public affairs really boosts that knowledge, that understanding, and supports clients, organisations, and everyone to build those relationships and makes that positive change. And it's not all about risk. I think we talk a lot about risk, particularly on the investment side of things, but it's actually a lot about opportunity too. Lots of opportunities, and lots of organisations have got ideas, solutions, policy ideas, thoughts, and about how to make the world better. And they need to be shared, and they need to be shared kind of proactively to make our decision making better overall. So, and actually business and government comes together a lot and creates really, really helpful, brilliant solutions to issues that are quite thorny, and that's great. So what, kind of why does political literacy matter there? Well, it's absolutely the whole fabric of business and how our economy and society operate. So understanding that is key. It makes good business sense, but also it's a frustration of mine that some in our sector like to think that politics is an enigma and it's exclusive and it's for other people, and that's absolutely not the case. Politics is for everyone, everybody, and everyone should be there shaping it. Sometimes things are complex and a bit thorny, but that's why that input's critical. So, to shape policy, to shape business and decision making for the better. And all I can say is, if you're really passionate about change, about politics, about the system and making things better and helping government make better decisions, please join our sector. It's a great place to be. So thanks so much, and again to Rebecca for the opportunity to speak today.
Thank you, Louise, and thank you to all of our speakers for your really passionate contributions. It's really evident to see that everyone who's taken part in today's event has a genuine passion for increasing political literacy. Matteo has arrived in just the nick of time for his contribution before we go into breakout rooms. Hi, Matteo, can you hear me okay?
I can indeed. Hi.
Hi, I did your intro earlier, and we've heard from a range of the other speakers, so I realise you've just arrived, but may I throw you into the deep end and throw it over to you to talk to us about political and media literacy?
Sure, yeah, no, definitely. I can definitely do that. First of all, apologies for my delay. I think I may have been stuck while I was with the 1 hour time difference, but I'm here. Let me just dismiss these things up here. So as Rebecca mentioned, my name is Matteo and I'm from an organization called ShoutOut UK, and we run political and media literacy courses primarily in secondary, school and college. And just to talk a little bit briefly about both. So political literacy for us is the kind of basic bare bones understanding as to how our democracy functions. So understanding what local government is, how an MP gets elected, what is first past the post, the role of the monarchy, for example, in the case of the UK. So essentially just the bare bone basic understanding as to how a democracy functions, which frankly should be something that I think every single school and college should do just as a basic. Unfortunately, at the moment, we are in a situation where it's really a postcode lottery. So certain schools will do it incredibly well, certain schools won't, and the majority of schools, unfortunately, won't do it at all. We as an organization, as well as with Rebecca and others, have formed an APPG on political literacy to try and make sure that this is something that every young person gets access to, regardless of background, area that they are, etc. And then media literacy is how to critically analyze the information we receive online, offline, on radio, TV, or wherever else you get your information from. as well as being able to tell the difference between dis, mis, and malinformation. And just to give you a very, very, very brief overview, disinformation is false information that's created specifically to deceive you. Misinformation is false information that is shared by someone inadvertently thinking that it's real, but it isn't. And then malinformation, which is slightly more complicated, is real information that is shared to influence the situation, but it has nothing to do with the situation. So, for example, we did some work in the Republic of Moldova over COVID, where we translated a load of our media literacy resources into Russian and Romanian, and then localized them by using localized examples. And one example that they gave for malinformation, which I like to use because it just really hammers home what malinformation is basically information where this one politician, this female politician, was running for re-election, and the opposition had brought to light her marital status. It had absolutely no relevance to her being able to govern the country or not. It had no relevance to her politics or what she decisions that she may make, or the ability to impact her job. But they used that true information to impact her, or try to impact how many people would vote for her. So that would be classed as malinformation. And we create graphic animations, infographics, as well as run courses to help young people critically analyze the information we receive. As you can probably imagine, courtesy of COVID, the amount of people, schools, colleges, organizations, and so forth requesting media literacy training has really exploded in recent months, just purely because of the sheer amount of misinformation around the vaccine, around COVID. And I'm sure all of us have heard or have examples of certain instances of misinformation. Specifically, I'm sure we've all heard of the 5G one, as well as other slightly crazier ones, which I shan't mention today, because I think let's talk a bit more positive rather than the lunacy of what some people believe. So that's a kind of short introduction. One other thing to, I guess, mention around media literacy is that we have started, and I think it's quite an interesting avenue to consider for all of us, is the link between misinformation and media literacy, as well as far-right extremism. So one of the things that we've started to do quite a bit is work with prevent teams, help counter far-right extremism by utilizing media literacy and critical thinking skills to help young people not get caught up in that kind of misinformation, because it's easier to prevent someone and to help someone understand what is bad information than it is to then try and dissect the bad information that they already believe. So it's easy to catch or prevent someone from going down that level of conspiratorial thinking than it is to try and drag them out of that conspiratorial thinking once they're already caught up in it. Anyway, I'm looking for more than enough. Rebecca, back over to you, and thank you for allowing me to speak.
No, thank you, Matteo. I always find my conversations with you extremely thought-provoking, and you always raise a lot of really important issues around why media literacy is so important. So whilst our speakers have been speaking, I've been busy assigning you all to breakout rooms. I did it based on what I could gather about you from your email addresses, and we have I Have a Voice youth ambassador who's going to be guiding each of those breakout rooms. We're going to be using a tool called Miro, but they will provide you with information about that, and we'll come back together at 1:20 to wrap up and hear back from your conversation. So I'm just going to start those rooms now. If anyone has any issues accessing those, just come back to this main room and I will be here to assist. Thank you all for contributing to those discussions. I could see lots of activity in the chat and in the Miro boards, and I'll be catching up with the youth ambassadors afterwards as well to make sure that we capture all of the insight that you shared with us today. So thank you. I hope that the breakout rooms were a chance for you to digest, because I appreciate we gave you a lot of information today, but also a chance to discuss. As I mentioned in my opening words, this is a discussion paper and we want to keep talking with everyone here today to take these discussion points forward. So please don't view this as a one-off, but as the start of an ongoing conversation. The youth ambassadors are going to give us a couple of key points from each of the breakout discussions, and then we'll wrap up. So Ben, you had breakout room 1, I believe, so over to you.
Amazing, thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, we had an amazing discussion and I made lots of different notes, so give me a minute to have a look through some of the key points. Yeah, I think one of the big things we discussed is how there very much is a delivery gap between kind of strategy and aims, and then how that's delivered in person to young people, and that's kind of amplified through some educational settings not being required to deliver the national curriculum, so how that's kind of a policy barrier, that it's not required everywhere. We spoke about how more needs to be done to kind of inform and help support teachers to deliver appropriate kind of content. And we also mentioned an example of how Wales are trialling a pilot with kind of a cascade model where people educated in politics kind of hand that down to teachers, and then they support it to give it to kind of the older students, and then in turn each year group after that hands it off to the other. So it's like a model of young people learning from what they teach to others, and so very interactive. We also spoke about how kind of we're changing terminology to be more kind of inclusive and to change points of views almost. So things like when we're talking about politics, we're not involving political parties in it, so thinking more about democracy, and same with kind of creating civic centres or civic places where people can have facilitated healthy debate and discussion, and kind of making sure that we're speaking locally, we're moving away from the idea that politics is Westminster and it's not, it's local communities. So
amazing, so much food for thought then, so many brilliant examples that people have shared with us. Thank you so much. Next, may I go over to Divyani, who is facilitating breakout room 2.
Yeah, so I was facilitating breakout room 2, where we were discussing measuring political literacy and who to engage in order to engage young people and change the processes. In terms of measuring political literacy, we had a really good conversation. We said there's a wide range of things that we are able to do, but the main things kind of involve turnout, and that's on a youth level. And you know, you can see the referendum, the Scottish referendum, where they allowed 16-year-olds to vote, and the turnout for 16-year-olds was actually pretty good. So it's a really good way to be able to see who's kind of interested in things like that. And there's actually some really unique ones that we had, whether it's Google search numbers for political ideas. And that's a really big thing in marketing, and being able to see exactly what people are looking for by demographics as well. And then we kind of had a main conversation about how all of these ideas, whether it's measuring political literacy or engaging young people, always starts within education or at home. I think it's really important because there's such a discrepancy between you know, different schools and socioeconomic factors, and being able to really engage young people comes from when they're younger and them seeing what opportunities are available to them. And then not only that, kids learning in schools as well, and the amount of people that kids are learning in schools, and how many schools really offer political education from a young age. So we're speaking to Kirsty, and she was saying that it was all I believe that most children were offered some form of citizenship from year 7. Then alternative, when I was in school, only like 11 people out of 250 did citizenship for a GCSE. So there's like a large discrepancy between that as well. And yeah, in order to engage people, the main thing that we said is, like I said, just starting at schools and being able to really press that, you know, kids need to be involved in the process somehow. And a good way to do that could also be involving democratic processes in schools from a young age. so then kids can see a tangible results as well. So yeah, those are the key points that we made, and I think it was Katie who said that it's not across the UK where kids are all disenfranchised, because in Wales it's actually not too bad. So yeah, those are the points that we had, but yeah, really good discussion from our side as well.
Thank you, Divyani. Really great to hear in both discussions about things happening outside of the London bubble, which we can definitely get caught up in. Next up, we have Fatima, who is facilitating breakout room 3.
Hi, so yeah, we had a really good discussion, and the 3 themes that kind of came about. So the first being like having better work experience and also internship opportunities, and an emphasis on also paid opportunities as well. You know, like speaking from experience, having like a paid internship at GK helped me so much. You know, I could take my knowledge and talk about it to my friends and family who, you know, they also had never heard about public affairs. So that's obviously really important, and we do really think that there should be more paid internships. And the second thing that came about was sort of deconstructing the whole like old boys network, and kind of making it a lot more diverse and like representative of people. Because, you know, like if people start to see people like them in politics, like they will turn out and vote more. Like if I saw more Somali young women, you know, in politics, I would be a lot more like I guess more like interested in politics. And then the third one, which was mentioned, is confidence. So confidence in young people, you know, like really supporting and sort of uplifting them, and also supporting ethnic minorities, speaking from experience as well. Having like, you know, like having translators or having focus groups in areas, we think that would be really important in sort of restoring confidence in both, you know, like we talk about intersectionality, so supporting young people as well as supporting ethnic minorities. So yeah, that was our discussion.
Brilliant, thank you. A great look at all of the different facets of diversity. And last but certainly not least, Kat, over to you for breakout room 4.
Hiya. So in our breakout room, we focused a lot on question 2, which was about kind of the interlinking of media literacy and political literacy, and then how we can engage people with that. And so we kind of were saying how like media safety and like a lot about the internet, it is taught in schools, you know, how to be aware of your online presence and stuff. But if that was actually taught from like a political approach and looking at political information and finding out, you know, because a lot of it is subjective. I was talking with Matteo and he was telling me about something from a Guardian, like the article was completely forged and it was spread with lots of misinformation. And so if it's taken from that kind of approach, you can kind of look at it from an interlinked perspective. And then also for who we wanted to engage. So we kind of said about parents, because obviously they are going to, there's a slight hierarchy in the political world, I suppose. And if young people don't have the tools to be engaged, parents are more likely to be listened to by politicians. But also someone from our breakout room, I think her name was Lara, she said she works with young migrants. And she said that by actually going to groups who are really personally affected by a lack of political literacy, that's a way that you can engage people and get them passionate about this kind of sphere and these issues. So we had different ideas about either parents or actual young people. And I feel like those are both really important ways to tackle the issue.
Yeah, thank you so much. So great to finish on such a solution focused point, and thank you to everyone who's been sharing content in the chat. I'm just going to share some links to the report and various items from I Have a Voice. Thank you so much everyone for joining us today. This is intended to be the launchpad for further discussion. In particular, we're looking for partners to develop a measure for political literacy for employers like GK Strategy who want to reduce barriers for underrepresented groups to access employment opportunities in the political sphere. And a group of our youth ambassadors have put together a survey. Oh, I think I've put all of the links twice, so so good I put them twice, who are looking to survey young people on what they want to know about politics and what political literacy and education should look like from their perspective. So if you are a young person or you work with young people, we would love it if you could share that. We'll be putting it out on our socials over the next few weeks, so feel free to follow us on those to keep in touch. I'm aware it's bang on 1:30, so Thank you so much for joining us today. It has been a whirlwind, hopefully a useful and interesting whirlwind. I've certainly found it insightful, and thank you so much to everyone who contributed to today and to the report.